Hello there. Welcome to the 1 year anniversary of the SPS podcast. Yes. In this episode, I want to go through the mental model that I use in my life that has helped me go from broke and lost to making six figures as a coach now. And it's also the mental model behind my one-to-one coaching package. And I call it the loop of performance. I think you're going to enjoy this episode. Let's get into it. You're listening to the Self-Performance Strategies podcast. My name is Stephen and I am your host. The SPS pod is all about breaking down the complex world of performance and making it easier for you to build momentum in your life. Essentially, I'm here to help you do less dumb shit. The SPS pod is brought to you by the Pro Accelerator Program, a program specifically designed to help business owners and solopreneurs get rid of mental fatigue, save at least 10 hours a week, and also build a lot of momentum towards the key pillars and the goals that matter most to them. If that sounds like something you're interested in, check out the show notes and follow the links for the Pro Accelerator. But now, it's time to get into this episode. Welcome. Hello. We are in episode 57 of the SPS podcast. And as I said in the intro, I want to discuss with you in this episode the loop of performance. It's the mental model that I created in my life that is now the backbone of my Pro Accelerator coaching program. But before we jump into it and I tell you why the steps are in the order that they're in the order of, or what the actual loop of performance is, let's share a quote to frame this episode. And this quote comes from Elon Musk. He said, "I think it's very important to have a feedback loop. We're constantly thinking about what you've done and how you could be doing it better. I think that's the single best piece of advice. Constantly think about how you could be doing things better and questioning yourself." If you've heard me on this podcast before, if you've been on my Twitter, if you've been on my LinkedIn, if you're on my email list, you know that I love a good journal session. You know that I ask myself good questions. You know that I work in a 90-day sprints. And those sprints require you to ask really solid questions, build plans, and give yourself a feedback loop where you're continuously improving yourself. So that quote really fits into the conversation that we're having today and this loop that I've created, the loop of performance, which also is a new program and community. And if you're interested in finding out more, there are links in the descriptions. You can click those and you can follow along the trail and land on the landing page. But the window for signing up is only open for 5 days. This is July 1st when this podcast is being posted. By Thursday night PST, which is Vancouver time where I live, the doors will close for this month or two or quarter, depending on when I reopen them again. But if you want to go and check that out, please do. But let's get into what the loop is and the 6 steps. I'm going to quickly go through the 6 steps and then I'm going to talk about them individually. The 6 steps are your performance and lifestyle accelerator, the vision and direction clarity blueprint, the high ROI productivity bootcamp, the explore and eliminate emotional barriers, the life optimization system, and the 90-day sprint program. Those are the 6 steps to the loop and the 6 steps within the program. And I want to go through each of them very quickly and describe them in a way that you understand why they're in that order and why it's a loop. But first, how did I come up with it? Well, if you've listened to this podcast before, you know that I wasted about 10 years of my life. From the late teens to late 20s, I partied every weekend. I lived paycheck to paycheck. And then about 12 years ago, 13 years ago nearly now, I had an opportunity to move out to Canada, Vancouver, where I stayed. And then since landing, I have onboarded so much personal development over the last 10 or 12 years. But through learning things like spiral dynamics, learning things like project management, going through Stoic philosophy for years, working in leadership, reading a ton of leadership books, working my way through a lot of my own bullshit and a lot of the dumb shit that I was doing, I really started to see that there is a systematic loop that you can go forward. And the reason why I called a loop is I don't like this idea of Bitcoin crash, kind of stock market-esque, your life's going to be up and down when you're trying to improve. I don't necessarily agree with that. I do think there are ups and downs in life, but this idea that your progression forward is like a stock that is going to go down sometimes and crash, and then you have to come back up to big highs. They really make it out like this huge dip and forward. They almost make it out like success is this, you're either completely bankrupt or you're making millions, and I just don't believe that. I think life is a little bit more of a progression and of a loop. And I find in my own journey, as I raise my floor, as I do less dumb shit, I don't get those dips anymore. I don't crash. Like my worst days now, in 2023 when I'm recording this, are maybe me overeating or eating crap sweets, going to the store and buying a pizza and buying a bag of M&Ms. That's a bad day for me. Because I'm letting my hunger distract me, and I'm eating some dumb shit food. I might have the odd beer from time to time, but I hardly ever drink anymore. 10, 12 years ago, my floor, when shit used to go wrong in my life, I'd go out on a Friday night and I wouldn't come back into the house until Sunday. I'd party all weekend, and I'd use it as an excuse to be like, oh, well, I'm not having a good time at work, so I'm going to go out with my friends for 2 or 3 days. And it's dumb shit. It's dumb shit. Obviously, you need a support network, and should hang out with friends and family when things aren't going wrong, and talk to them and go and have a good time with people. But that doesn't mean that you should be in nightclubs to 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning doing dumb shit. And that's the mistake that I made. I did the wrong things when life went bad back 10, 12 years ago. But now I've raised my floor. And that's why I disagree with this idea that your life is like a stock that goes up and down. Because my worst days, and I'm sorry to repeat myself, my worst days look nothing like my worst days from 10 years ago. So my floor, I will never go back to that floor. I will never do those self-sabotaging habits to the level that I did them back then. The thinking, the mental models I have in my brain, the ability that I have to walk myself out of the situation mentally, emotionally, and even physically now, going for walks, exercising and eating healthily, having good routines. All these processes that I've been able to build into my life stop me from having such a shitty low floor. And that's where this idea about the loop comes into it, where you're looping forward. Because when you loop forward, you're not crashing. Your low point of your loop should never be lower than your previous loop. So you're looping forward. If you imagine circles stacking on top of each other, slightly above each other, say you're thinking off to the right here in your brain. You got a circle of a circle slightly higher than it beside it, and the next circle slightly higher but beside it, and those circles, the bottom of the second or third circle are higher than the bottom of your first circle. And that's the loop going forward, because you're constantly going up in that direction. And you keep stacking and you keep growing and you keep having these new breakthroughs and these new processes and systems that you're embedding into your life. So your floor raises with you, and your old ceilings become your new floors. And you constantly do that over and over and over and over and over again. And that's what I've done over the past 10 years. And that's where I've then been able to formulate, okay, well, what's the system? What's the process? And then with that, I've been able to come up with this loop. This loop, as I said at the start of the podcast, is the backbone to my Pro Accelerator coaching program. I've used this loop with dozens of business owners, leaders, corporate people, just people who reached out to me and want a little bit of life coaching. I've used it with a whole host of people, 6-figure, 7-figure, 8-figure business owners. And it works because it's the process that I use to go from broken lost and doing dumb shit to running a 6-figure coaching business. So there's an actual process to it here. And obviously I've read hundreds of books, done hundreds of courses. I've been able to formulate these ideas from being in the arena. So let's jump into each section. I don't want to spend too long in each section and really bore you with a super long podcast. I just really want to go through each step quite quickly. And I want to just share with you, why is it this step, first of all? Now, the first step I call your performance and lifestyle accelerator. The reason why we start here is I believe the first step of any progression is to remove the dumb shit. It's to close open loops, to drop projects, delegate stuff, remove stuff. It's to vanquish energy vampires, projects, objects, things around your house. It's to get over the fear that is holding you back. And then it's also to start being more intentional about what you're doing each day and start taking action. So that's where I believe things should start, because I see in the personal development industry, in the success industry, it's too lean towards new. It's like FOMO marketing. They're pushing at you. You should do this. You should use that. You should do this. And it's they're selling you a system. I'm selling you a system. It's kind of ironic when you think about it. But I honestly believe if you sign up for a new coach or a new program and they're asking you to do new things on top of stuff, no. Everything should start with removal. It's addition by subtraction is the first step, and that's backed by science. It's not backed by science, but it's backed by the amount of content that I've been able to go through, and also from my own life experiences. Then the next step, I call it the vision and direction clarity blueprint. Now, I'll preface this with saying that you should always have big goals, and you should have a destination where you want to go, but you should get really, really clear and define what success is for you, and then get really, really clear on why you want that success. So the first thing that you do, the first two steps, they're almost one step, but I've broken them up because, exercises and stuff. But the first two steps, what we're doing is we're clearing away a lot of dumb shit. We're calling out the stuff that we've got to remove. And then we're also getting extremely clear and defining what we want and asking why. Why do we want that? It's extremely important. I found in my life that why, it just hits. Knowing why you're doing stuff, it just hits. It allows you to take action on a daily basis because you know your destination and you know why you want to go there at an deep emotional level. The third step then is where you do a lot of the work. I call it the high ROI productivity bootcamp, but this is where you put the rubber to the road and we start doing the tactical journaling. We start tracking ourselves, getting that feedback loop, going back to the Elon Musk quote. We're setting our big rocks. We're setting our goals for each day, each week, each month. And we're understanding our rhythms, how we work each day, the days that we like working, the times that we like working. We're making sure we're getting the right sleep. We're making sure we're working in coherence with our ultradian and circadian rhythm. This is when we take action. First two steps are building the foundation. Imagine this is like being an architecture. Being an architect. You're being an architect who does architecture. And you're passing over the blueprints now to the builder, to the building site, to the people who are going to actually build the skyscraper, the house, whatever it is. This is what you're doing. This is exactly what you've done. The first two steps are the blueprints. And then the third step is we know what we're doing. We've got it defined. We're going after it. Boom. Then the fourth step is to explore and eliminate emotional barriers. Why is that the fourth step? Why do we remove barriers then? Well, I personally believe, because I've seen it in my own life, the real barriers to progress happen once you start taking action. They truly do. A lot of people don't take action because they procrastinate and they think taking action is really hard to start with. But that's just because they don't have clear goals and a why. But once you get clear goals and a why, you can take action. Everybody can take action. But then what starts to derail you is limiting beliefs, fears, BS, dumb shit habits, self-sabotaging, internal, external bullshit. And those shitty things will come out when you try to take action. They don't come out when you're not taking action. The real reason why you're not moving forward doesn't come out while you're sitting on the sofa thinking about taking action. So in this process, I've got meditation techniques. I've got exercises that have helped me, and help my clients realize, well, what are these limiting beliefs? What is this bullshit? And to let go of it. The path of surrender. We're talking Michael Singer here. We're talking David Hawkins' level of consciousness. We're letting go of that bullshit that's holding us back. And then we're starting to flow towards our big goals. But you'll not know what you need to let go of if you're not taking action towards a defined direction. And that gets us into the fifth step, because once we've got past those barriers, and this is where the loop idea comes into. So think of the first curve of the loop is up. And the first curve of the loop is energy and momentum. But then we start to drift off. We go down the other side of the circle. We're a loop, and we're like, oh no, we're what are we doing? We're hitting these barriers. We've got these limiting beliefs. But then we resolve those limiting beliefs. We're getting to the bottom of the circle of the loop. And then once we resolve those barriers, we're starting to build that momentum. That fall and that dip is starting to spring around and give us that momentum to shoot up so we can get to the top again. And this is what starts happening at step 5. And this is true for me, because in my life, and I've seen it with my clients, when we remove the dumb shit and we tackle the emotional barriers that are holding us back, the physical, mental, emotional barriers, whatever they are, internally, externally, when we actually remove those, we get momentum, and we can start asking ourselves good questions. Going back to the feedback loop from the Elon Musk quote, we can start asking ourselves better questions. How can I level up mentally, emotionally, and physically? How can I avoid the distraction spiral? How can I avoid these barriers again? What can I do? Now that I understand the barriers, how can I move past them? And that's the step. That's the 5th step. It's the life optimization system, or the life organization system, as I call it, where you're then getting that awareness and you're questioning, hey, can I go further, faster, farther? Yeah, of course you can. Of course you can. We all can. 100% we can. And then once we realize that, and we start to solidify what we can do, and how we can unlock our potential, we get to the final step of the loop, which then springs us forward into the next loop, which is the 90-day sprint program, which is where we start working in 12-week sprints. We start doing more in 12 weeks than we normally do in 12 months. We think about 10x is easier than 2x. Dan Sullivan quote, Ben Hardy book, fantastic. You should go and read it. It's brilliant. But the idea here, and a lot of people get 10x wrong, Grant Cardone, those types of people, the 10x multiplier type, 10x marketers on LinkedIn or Twitter, they don't get it right. It's not about working harder or 10xing 100K to $1 million. It's about looking at your current situation and being like, if my results started at the 10x, who would I have to show up as a person, mentally, emotionally, physically? What would my offer, my business have to look like? Could my business, brick and mortar, online, digital, wherever it is, could my business actually take 10x the amount of people? What people would I have to have around me? What systems would have to be in place for that to happen? That's what 10x is about. It's about thinking from a different angle. It's about taking a step back and being like, well, if I was the 10x, what would be the systems, the thinking, and the standards that I have to put in place to be able to do that? And then you then try to sprint towards that. That's the 90-day sprint program in, a minute, 2 minutes of me talking about it. Obviously, there's a lot more details to it. There's a lot more details to the 90-day sprint program. But that's the 6th step. And that's why I have them in a loop. Because I genuinely feel that people get progression wrong. They try to optimize first. And I'm going to go off on a bit of a rant here. Sorry. But I don't like this optimization idea. Again, earlier I was talking about, I don't like the fact people force new habits onto you. They force this FOMO onto you. And it's the same with optimization, fancy calendars, apps, optimize. But the better question is, what the fuck are you optimizing for? And that's why the 90-day sprints and the life optimization system are 5 and 6. Because we've built our foundations in step 1. We've got our direction in step 2. We've been getting action and results in step 3. We've seen the barriers that we have to overcome in step 4. We've overcome them, hopefully. Of course you will. And then we start going towards bigger and better things in step 5 and 6. But I honestly believe so many people out there in the world of personal development and success in business, even business coaches come into your business and they're like, okay, well, let's optimize things. When I worked in corporate, it was the same. You'd have the big 4 consultant firms come in and they'd be like, okay, well, let's optimize your process. To what end? First, to what end? Optimization for the sake of optimization is dumb shit. I personally believe you've got to be the architect first. You've got to build the foundations, build the blueprints, get results first of all, get things moving, then optimize in the direction. And that's what the loop is all about. The loop is there to help to provide you with a system that has not only worked for me, but has worked for my clients. And if you're interested in it, check out my Twitter page, check out my website, hit me up on my socials at stevetimoney.com. StephenTimoney.com is my website, but hit me up on Twitter at SteveTimoney. It's at SteveTimoney. Shoot me a DM of this loop idea. interests you, have a conversation with you. Obviously, I have it as a program now and a community. Launched today, July 1st, just like this podcast. It'll be open for 4 or 5 days. Check out the landing page. You listen to the podcast, check out the landing page. If it's something that interests you, it interests you. If it doesn't, it doesn't. No worries. If you got something out of this podcast, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. My goal here is to help people. It's to help people see progression in an easier way, to see their barriers in an easier way. If I've helped you in this podcast, that is absolutely fantastic, and I really deeply appreciate you listening all the way through to the end of the 57th episode of the SPS podcast. I was your host, Stephen. It was an absolute freaking pleasure to speak to you today, and hopefully we'll talk in the next one.